Just before the episode gets underway, I want to take the chance to ask you to support Reimagining Cyber by following or subscribing to the podcast. Also, if you can, why not leave us a rating and a review? It really helps other cybersecurity-minded folk find us. So, follow, subscribe, rate and review. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome to Reimagining Cyber. My name is Ben, and today we're unpacking a major development in the ransomware world. LockBit has resurfaced with a new version, LockBit 5.0, and there is chatter about a cartel-style alignment with other crews. Our resident expert, Tyler Moffitt, is with me. Tyler, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Now, if you would, can you set the stage? What has changed and why should listeners care right now?
I know, we've done at least, I think, 2 or 3 podcasts where we've mentioned LockBit, maybe even more. And I've been covering LockBit for years now. It feels like the past 4 or 5 years, they keep finding a way to establish themselves in headlines. And honestly, I felt like they were sort of gone for good. They've had numerous famous headlines where they were ransomware-as-a-service, right? And they were very popular. Like out of 2024 and 2023, probably the number one ransomware, billions of dollars in damages, making hundreds of millions of dollars in money, from ransom payments. But they got shut down multiple times. The FBI took them down and they came back. The FBI took them down again. They came back, taunted the FBI. Then the FBI doxed them, or the guy, LockBit support, if that makes sense. And then they had an Operation Kronos takedown last year, public sanctions. The brand itself, you have to realize it's all about the brand, ransomware-as-a-service. And so the brand took a beating, and which is how he was able to make so much money and be so damaging. It's never these ransomware actor groups, the people who make the payload, that are actually conducting the attack. They're attracting affiliates, right, in the payment scheme, profit sharing, and the affiliates are the ones conducting the attack. So they have to maintain a brand and confidence in order to have affiliates, right? And so now with this latest version, because the leader of LockBit support wasn't actually taken over or arrested, I should say, and was able to build back infrastructure, and they now have a specific focus, if that makes sense. They have cross-platform payloads, but now they're going after virtual infrastructure. Okay, so they're going after ESXi or other hypervisors that can bring down dozens of workloads at once. In fact, Health ISAC, they flagged LockBit 5.0, and multiple vendors have since confirmed, Windows, Linux, and ESXi targeting. So they're back, and they've got some new tricks up their sleeves, basically.
Yeah, for those who only caught the headlines, I suppose, remind us what LockBit is, why the 5.0 release is such a big deal.
Yeah, so like I said, they were ransomware-as-a-service brand. And the core operators, they provide the payload and the infrastructure. The affiliates is where this cash cow really comes to fruition and bloom, if that makes sense, because they need as many affiliates. I mean, the more affiliates you have, you give them all the payloads and the infrastructure, the more people you're going to essentially attack and profit share. And usually the affiliates grab the most amount of money, but it doesn't matter. It's all a profit sharing scheme. And so the more affiliates you have, the more money you make, just like a real business model, right? So Operation Kronos took out multiple sites and servers, and the government shut down, sanctioned the leadership, and that was the biggest, I think, downfall we first saw was that operation is it shook the trust. Right, the affiliates were scattered, and I'm like, I don't know if I trust this guy anymore, right? And obviously, this is a major new push to win back market share, because other ransomware groups were sort of welcomed this, maybe even cheered it, because they were tired of LockBit being number one, and so you've got other ransomware-as-a-service groups that are like, hey, we'll take you over here. We're not getting our server seized or giant sort of government sanctions, if that makes sense. So it's this new version. Essentially it signals that LockBit is really committed to coming back and getting back that market share.
Once the affiliates get a foothold, what does LockBit 5.0 do differently from the earlier versions?
Yeah, so there's 3 big reasons or differences, I should say. Virtualization first. So 5.0 emphasizes ESXi and other virtual environments. So if you impact the hypervisor, you can drop an entire data center, right? And so if those of you listening don't know, I hear me talk about hypervisor. It's the software layer on like a server that lets many virtual machines, and usually clients and their server, whatever you're using it for, share the same hardware. So it's huge scaling and cost savings. That's the whole purpose behind it, right? But the risk or problem here is if an attacker can take that layer, then every VM that rides on it is at risk all at once, right? And so this is where you start having a lot of these health ISAC and other vendors sort of call this out directly, because that's like a massive, massive risk, because you can potentially hit multiple different customers hitting essentially, one hypervisor on one server. So definitely, worrying there. And so that's one, virtualization. Two is cross-platform reach. So there's binaries and tooling to cover Windows, not just Windows, but Linux, ESXi, and it sort of gives affiliates flexibility across, multiple real estate of what servers and companies are running. And honestly, it speeds up the time to actual impact. And the next would be the evasion and anti-analysis. So what we've seen is I would say advanced obfuscation and tricks to slow reverse engineering and delay detection to sort of buy time to stage the data theft, because we have to realize before they actually it's not just immediate, oh, one person gets compromised, boom, ransomware is there, super fast. Like, no, they're doing data exfiltration. That's the purpose, is they want time to data exfiltrate as much data as possible. The juicy data, the customer identifying, information, the PII data that would violate GDPR or other data privacy governing regulations, the stuff that would get them in trouble if they were to leak it, because that's the purpose, to put it on the leak site for maximum amount of like extortion control, if that makes sense. And that's what they're going for, right? And they also want to, mess with your backups, make sure that when they deploy it, you can't access anything if they can, and before any, hypervisor alarms or any sort of group policies or any sort of alarms would trigger, if that makes sense.
So 5.0, it's tuned to hit fast, hit broad, and make response harder.
Yeah, basically. And, they're set up to do a good job with this.
Okay, then let's talk about who is the most exposed right now. Who should be paying the closest attention?
So yeah, MSPs, enterprises, anybody basically running the VMware ESXi, which is super popular. I mean, it's only becoming more popular. Virtual infrastructure at scale is massive cost savings. I mean, you go to a lot of these conferences with, MSPs and RMMs, and they're all talking about, how you can save money and make more money, right? And this virtual infrastructure at scale is like really, really popular. And so also mixed OS environments where Linux and Windows share storage and identity. And then also shops with legacy remote access, those devices or stale identity hygiene. 5.0 is, this LockBit new version is tuned for environments where one host controls, many workloads. And that's where impact is the highest. Where if you can get those environments that control, multiple essentially downstream customers and impact, then it's huge. And that's what they're going after, because it's, better bang for the buck.
Now, we keep seeing headlines about LockBit, Keylin, Dragon Force Alliance. What is real and what's smoke?
Yeah, so there are a lot of public claims and credible reporting, right, saying that these crews are sort of coordinating together to share resources and shape market pressure. So likely some back channels and talk support where they're communicating to each other on the tactics and, again, shared resources. Definitely interesting there. So partnership marketing for criminals, if that makes sense. They're not sharing their command and control servers and infrastructure in that regard. The effect is just faster diffusion of working, TTPs across crews. For example, Keylin has been active against well-known brands this month, and those techniques can bleed into affiliate playbooks. If somebody does something well and pulls it off successfully, others take notice and are like, we're going to put that in our, back pocket for later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the message then to defenders would be track techniques, not just names.
Absolutely. In fact, that's how a lot of the times we catch some of these guys or see, let's say if somebody gets shut down or their infrastructure seized, And we're like, when are they going to come back or rebrand? And we'll see something that's like, hey, this looks exactly like some technique that these guys used to do that, said they shut down and they went to take a break or whatever, and then they came back and rebranded. So definitely track the techniques, right? How they get in, how they stage data, how they tamper with backups. Do they do partial encryptions? How do they target the hypervisors? What sort of exploits they're going after? The names change, but the TTPs repeat.
Okay, let's reflect a bit then, if we can, on recent sanctions and arrests. How do they change the calculus for LockBit and its affiliates?
So yeah, they essentially are raising the cost of doing business. Operation Kronos, by the multinational governing agencies, they seized infrastructure and data, and the sanctions publicly named the leadership and created legal risk for enablers and money handlers, extraditions, charges, developers, you name it. I think there was an Israeli-Russian national who was a developer for LockBit. Something Panev was his last name, and he was arrested late last year on holiday. He went on holiday to Israel, and obviously Israel and U.S., they're good friends, and so they extradited him. And so he's actually going to spend time behind, U.S. prison bars. And so these extraditions and charges against developers, it signals that travel and funds are risky, right? The result ultimately is more fragmentation, quicker infrastructure churn, tighter control of the builds. Affiliates hedge their bets and sort of like the rebrand faster or jump ship to something else.
Okay, I put myself in the seat of the listener. I'm listening at home, or I'm in the office. I run Windows, Linux, ESXi. What should I be doing this week?
Yeah, definitely watch out for get rid of completely public exposure. For vCenter or any of your hypervisor management, put them behind super strong access controls, right? Least privileged models. Phishing resistant multi-factor authentication. Obviously, this is a big one. Please do it. And device trust for all virtualization and domain admins. Patch. Who would have thought I'd said patch here? But yeah, especially the ESXi vulnerabilities in the management planes. I mean, there's been so much of these ransomware groups going after the virtualization, and it's a lot of it. It's just the back door wide open because you haven't patched. And so please do that. Next would be backups and snapshots, right? At least one air-gapped path, right? So if you don't know what air-gap means, it's not plugged into anything. No Wi-Fi, no USB into a computer that has Wi-Fi, nothing, all right? And test cluster level restore times, not just single VM restores. Next would be detect pre-encryption stages. So look for a bulk archiving, data staging, backup deletion, unusual maintenance commands on your management hosts. Obviously extend EDR coverage, right, to Linux and hypervisor management systems. Don't stop at just Windows. A lot of these, Linux and hypervisor, they're super important now. And like I said, becoming very more popular to save money while you scale. And that's a risk, You got to watch out for it. And tabletop scenarios and exercises that include the hypervisor, okay? Define who declares the incident, who speaks to the regulators and customers, who owns the restore playbook, and time it all, right? How quickly can you take care of it?
Okay, Reimagining Cyber, we come out every Wednesday. Let's say I've got 2 things to do before the end of the week. What should I be doing?
Yeah, I would say take virtualization management off the open internet. Prove that you can restore your top 3 clusters with your recovery time objective, and then work on, at least map out the patching in your hardware. Those actions right there is probably going to do the most to make sure that, you're not on the radar for LockBit right now.
Let's zoom out a little bit before we bring the episode to a close. What does 5.0 tell us about the ransomware economy overall, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, LockBit's very resilient. This ecosystem in general, I mean, LockBit does a great job sort of exemplifying this ecosystem, that it adapts after pressure, even cherishes the thrill and the chase of policing entities. Because after all these takedowns, ransomware remains a resilient money machine. Business model, if you will, for the criminals. expect more small crews, shared tooling, faster copycat cycles. When something works, everybody's using it. And, this moment to push board level conversations on the, emulation and virtual infrastructure and recovery time objectives, you can win budget with the current headlines.
Final word then, Tyler.
Yeah, so I would say LockBit 5.0, which is now really coming back in the news, it's built to maximize business for their affiliates by targeting virtualization and dodging analysis. You don't need to be a direct LockBit target to benefit from this hardening. Tightening your identity, removing exposure, and, prove your restores, do tabletop exercise. It'll pretty much, like I said, blunt that force that any crew tries to copy with this playbook, and then use that momentum from recent enforcement to get the last mile of controls in place.
Tyler, fantastic stuff as always. Thanks so much.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you for listening. Do remember to subscribe to Reimagining Cyber. And if you get a moment, why not leave us a rating and review? See you next week. Goodbye.